and welcome to the Board Game Design Cuppa. I'm your host, Matthew Dunstan. How's everyone doing on this fine Wednesday morning, 14th of April, 2021? Hi, everyone. Morning, Rory. How are you going? By the way, great podcast, Rory. I listened to you on the, is it the 10-Minute Design podcast? There's probably one more word in there. But yeah, it was a really great episode. I recommend anyone who listens to podcasts. It's quite different in a way because it really is about 10 minutes or like 11 minutes each episode. 10-minute design chat, yeah. And so it's very short and sweet, but they do really interesting stuff. Hey, Arnold, how you going? Welcome. Arnold and I were also talking a little bit about games which mix icons and text and do that well. Does anybody, if anyone has ideas of interesting, like good examples of board games you think that have mixed iconography and text well in the game, that, we'd definitely be all ears for that kind of thing. Morning, Rob. Morning, Jay. Hi, Alex. How you going? Whoops. It was a really good episode with Rory. Okay. I'll stay silent for Zaid. We'll just talk about inconsequential things. Yeah, I need to look at that and somehow revert from. I will look. What am I? Can you revert from Twitch affiliate? Can you remove? Oh yeah, you. I think you can. Yeah. Anyway, it should. Hey, Zaid's here. Hey, Dutch Yoda, how you going? So I will look at to get rid of affiliate just because it doesn't make any sense, I think. So I hope everyone's doing well. Yes, hopefully everyone got the news that I am now officially just going to be streaming twice a week, Wednesday mornings and Friday afternoons. And hopefully that might be a good balance for things, but I really enjoy these morning streams, so I don't want to get say. I'm guessing there's a certain amount of sarcasm in all of this. Have you all just been in another stream and then come over here or something? Have I missed something? I've got my tea on the ground next to the plant. Hope everyone has their favorite hot beverage of choice. So what has been going on? Well, it's going to be. It's been a busy. It hasn't been too busy, but it's going to be a busy day now. I'm continuing. Yeah, Wednesday just turns out to be the busy day. It seems for things. So I am meeting with Jeff Allers after this, so we're going to keep play testing our roll and write or kind of flip and fill game, a Western fill flip and fill. And yeah, as I said before, I hope that I'll mention to Jeff whether he might want to come on to the stream and maybe we can show it off and play test it for everybody. Teas and scones, Rory. Oh, very nice, very nice. We're looking. Yeah, does anyone have a favorite scones recipe? We were actually looking into trying to bake our own scones at some point. I'm sorry to hear that, Zaid. Yeah. Well. Anyway, you're welcome here. I'm glad you could drop by for a bit. Yes, and then later on we've got a meeting with Lucky Duck Games. We're going to play through Hitman properly. So we kind of pitched it in last week, and they were kind of interested. And so we're going to run a session on Tabletop Simulator, which we'll play together, or we'll facilitate the experience. Dave and I and the folks at the publisher will play the game. So let's see how that goes. I've got probably my final meeting with one of my mentees after that. Which I think has gone pretty well. Actually, I think both of my mentees have done well. I think one has just had a sort of a new child, and I think has had a lot of other things going on. So, there's probably been less, kind of like tangible progress, maybe. But I think we've had some really interesting chats, and also they're sort of at different points in their careers. One's a bit earlier on, so kind of only working on one or two games. Another one's been designing for quite a while and has a lot of projects at the same time. So a lot of it's about just like managing all these things together. No worries. Enjoy safe traveling, Alex. Yeah. And Rob has one more mentee meeting due for this weekend. Yeah. How have you found it, Rob? And I can't remember, because have you been both mentoring and being a mentee, or are you just one or the other for this round? Yeah, so I'll have the last one probably. I think it's the maybe there's one more, because it's supposed to be until the end of the month, right? Yeah, it'll either be we'll work it out whether this one will be the last one, or it'll make sense to meet one more time, and I'll meet one more time with my other mentee. I think next week probably, and then I think I am done. Then I think I am done for the day, and I probably have to mix in a bit of research in there and things like that. No worries. Hi, hey Nicholas. Yeah, no, look away. Yeah. Oh yes. Well, good luck for the Zenobia Award, right? No worries. I hope it goes well, and yeah, feel free to send along what you've got whenever it's ready. Rory said, I didn't even realize it was the last week. I think I'll probably keep chatting to my mentee group. Well, I don't think it is the last week. I think this is the last month. I think it goes to the end of this month. I'm pretty sure, but I might be wrong. I thought it was like February, March, April, like 3 months. So yeah, you've still got like 2 weeks or something like that. And I think, if you want to keep chatting, there's no, I mean, there's nothing wrong with, you continuing to have a friendship or relation, some other relationship or colleagues or professional kind of interaction with mentees, I think is fine. I might, I mean, it's actually interesting that with one of my mentees, he's also designing kind of narrative puzzle games, kind of in the same space as what I work in, and we might end up working together. I'm not sure, but we kind of have similar interests, but at the same time come at things from different angles. So it could be interesting. Rob says, I'm just mentoring. It's my first time. I've enjoyed it. I feel I have learned a lot from it, maybe more than my mentee did. I definitely want to see how my mentee moves forward in the future. Oh, that's really nice. Oh, I'm glad it's been a positive experience. I've generally found it to be a really positive experience as well. And yeah, I don't think I've had really that bad an experience with anybody. I think I've mentored at least 6 or 7 people by now, I guess, over times. But yeah, I probably will keep being involved. I don't know whether I might cut down to just doing one person at a time. I mean, 2 is not too bad. I mean, because it kind of averages out like 30 to 60 minutes a week. It's not too bad as a commitment. But it's just when sometimes the meetings come together and you have like 2 meetings next week, in consecutive days, it can feel a bit much. But yeah, I'll see what happens when I make up my mind. Yeah, and so I had a good meeting with a publisher on Monday about a prospective release, a game that will be released of ours in 2022. Mainly chatting about rules. Actually, it's kind of interesting that the game's fairly solid, but there are still a few they're not fundamental rules, but they're sort of like rules that will have an impact on how game plays. There's sort of like 5 card effects, and one of the effects is a bit too strong, and we're trying to work out how to bring that back in line with the other ones, because you really ideally want them to be equally interesting and equally powerful, or in the right situation. So it's interesting how you're trying not to change a lot of other things, and so you're thinking about how can you fix a problem without breaking everything else, which is something, it's a very different, it's a very developmental kind of side of things rather than the design. And we have really interesting discussions, because between the developers and the publishers and Brett and I, who are both designers, we all have sort of different opinions about how to fix particular problems, and the case is just come up with a few possibilities and then test, and you see how it kind of works out. But it's nice to have a publisher that's involved and engaged with that process. I'd far prefer disagreements than just no interest or no kind of interaction at all. So yeah, that's been pretty good. Yeah, just various projects sort of chugging along. Had a bit of good news, actually, that one of the game has not been announced yet, but it will be probably at Target later this year, it looks like. So yeah, the game's going to probably be released in July. I can't really probably say more about it, or I'll wait until it's announced. So I assume it's going to be announced soon, but that's really exciting. I've never had a game in that kind of, it's not quite mass market, but I guess Target is somewhat mass market. So that's kind of exciting. I mean, it hasn't happened yet, so but I think it's the definite play at it. But if the last years have taught anything, you don't really count on anything until it actually happens. But that was a nice little confirmation from the publisher, and they have a really good plan for what they want to do, and it will then be more widely available. I think Target often works on like they have a kind of a limited period of exclusivity. I think it's going to be 3 months or something like that, and then it will be widely available. So yeah, that was a really nice bit of news, and we got to see a bit of art and a few other sort of aspects of the game, and it's all looking really great. I think it's all been sent off to print now, so yeah, we will see how all that goes. Yeah, and thanks for the nice words in chat. Yeah, but the other kind of not news, but if I think back to what's happenings over the past week or even since Friday, was that I have got firmly. I mean, yes, I think using the word addicted is actually quite correct here. Firmly addicted to Stardew Valley. Kind of unfortunately, I think I have had the time, but it's sort of funny because I played Stardew Valley, or I bought the game. It must have been a few years ago, and I think I looked on Steam how much I'd played, and I think I'd played barely an hour, probably like 45 minutes, and then I just completely bounced off it and didn't even go back to it. And seeing Michael Fox playing it again, a few other folk streaming, I thought, I've got the game, I should just try it out again. So I started a new game, and I'm like 20 plus hours in or something over not that many days. So much so that I'm actually getting a controller because my it's starting to hurt my hands in certain way, because I have to use a keyboard and mouse, and it's not. I don't think it's a very good game for. I have a feeling it's a game that's much better with controller, because the kind of using keyboard and mouse is not like the best way for it. So I'm forced not to play anymore until I get this controller, because I don't want to do. I'm just feeling a few little twings in my hands and things, and I'm like, it's probably not a good thing. So I will I will take a little break. But yeah, it's really enthralled me, and it's very engaging. It's sort of funny. I think when I still step back from it, there is a lot of like grind. There are other games like this which you're kind of grinding through to get things, but I don't know. I think maybe just the kind of combination of it's just it's very nice looking game. It's very cute. There's just a nice vibe from it, which kind of helps you get through some of that grind. There's enough progression, enough kind of interesting things sort of popping up along the way. It's all kind of timed well, I think, and I like that as you kind of unlock, you do unlock basically ways to kind of remove that grind. So it's sort of interesting that you go kind of through one cycle of it, but then by the time you come back to that whole grind, the cycle, and come back to it again, you've kind of progressed enough that you don't have to necessarily do all the tasks that you were doing before. Like farming gets a lot easier and things like that. So really nice things to say about it. I've really enjoyed it. I haven't got this kind of lost in a video game for a long time, actually. That's ever since Luckily a Landlord, maybe anyone who watches the channel would know. But really impressive, and the fact that it's been designed by one person is incredible, actually. So I'm hungry to get through and discover what I can in the game. And yeah, we'll definitely be checking out the other things that they've designed in the future, or if they come back to I think there's some rumors that they're floated that there might be a Stardew Valley sequel sometime, or that's anyway. Drawn Onward has a question. Can I ask if any signed game of yours you had the highest hopes for and then was mishandled or poorly developed by a publisher? I understand if you want to be vague, but I'm curious how badly publishers have botched your game in the past, because I have to believe it's happened over your career already. Yeah, that's it. It's definitely a fair question. I mean, yeah, it's hard. Like I've talked about Costa Rica on the channel before, but I don't think that game doing badly is really on a result of being botched by the publisher. You could maybe argue maybe the art could have been a bit better, but I don't think it's that bad. I don't think there's no game that I would say has been like really botched in terms of like bad, like the rules were terrible or there were misprints or things like that. Maybe actually the game that probably is like most disappointing is something like The Great City of Rome. So this was a game again released with Brett Gilbert, and it was released by Abacus Spieler. So it was with Abacus Spieler in German, and then it was translated by Z-Man into English. And it was actually, so it's basically a kind of a city building game, and you have these cards, and you're going to make a 4x4 grid, and they're going to score in certain ways. And it has this kind of cool way of kind of bidding for sort of the order in which you'll take cards and what kind of resources you'll get to use for the turn. And the development process was perfectly fine, and actually the game didn't change that much from what we gave them. But I think ultimately where the publisher kind of fell down was actually just in the theming and the art. So when you look at that, not exactly the most exciting game, and it's another Roman themed game. And to be honest, I have to admit that the cards themselves are not exactly that exciting. Like you look at these sort of things, and this was a game released 2 years ago, I think. It's all very functional, it's all very nice, and I guess the isometric kind of art has a certain style, but it's pretty classical, and I don't know, it certainly has an aesthetic, but I think it just because of that, it just was never that. I can see why folks might not be that excited by the game, and it didn't sell very well at all, despite actually topping the Fair Play rankings at Spiel. So I think it was joint winner of the Fair Play rankings. Now, of course, the Fair Play rankings are a little bit like the BGG rankings at cons. There's always a certain of there's a bias for the booths that are closer to the Fair Play booth, because often people will play a game and they'll go to the Fair Play and they're like, oh, I should vote on the games. And of course they remember the one they just played. But it was very well, kind of rated at the fair. It just kind of, it just never excited anybody, I think, ultimately. And I remember actually Rado made a video, I don't know how long ago, but not that long ago, like in the last year. And I don't know if it was something like the top 10, like underrated games, or like, something like, I think he said he has very high, he really likes the game actually, which is really nice, but he notes it just looks horrible and not that very interesting. And so, yeah, I think that was probably one of the biggest disappointments of I think it could have been better themed. I think when they said, oh, we want to do a Roman thing, we're like, oh, okay, but I guess it's just very, very classical kind of take on it, and it was kind of reflected in the sales. So I'd probably say that, but there are other aspects of development that were great, like the publisher kept us involved and things like that. So I don't think I would say that it was like botched. It was just one of these things that there's a particular style and a particular thing was chosen. It just didn't really work, I would say. Morning, Baz. How are you going? Yeah, well, you obviously haven't been listening to tuning into the game design Cuppas for a while. We've moved the game design Cuppas to the man with a fern or whatever kind of locale. But the real reason is because now that the seasons are sort of changing, the sun directly comes where I would normally be streaming from, so it wouldn't be possible for me to see anything. So that's why I've sort of moved to a different thing, and my game shelves are just well, there's some books, but the game shelves are just just over here. That's why, so quite easy to kind of pick things off the shelf if I need to. Probably the other disappointment I would say is this game called Light and Dark. So it's a game from AEG. And it's it was sort of one of their mini kind of games. It's a very, very simple, it's a flicking game. Like, that's basically the game. There are 10 discs, which are double-sided, and they have stickers on them. There is a small, like, sort of card expansion that you can use if you want, but actually you don't need that. And I actually think the game without them is better. And it's basically like Othello, a flicking game. So each player has 5 druids. Sorry, no, that's not right. There are 5 druids, and each druid is either light or dark. And one player is the light and one player is the dark. And there are 5 torches, which are either lit or in darkness. And you set up the game where you have basically, there are 3 torches lit and 2 in darkness. They're kind of in the middle of the table, and then each player will have 2 or 3 druids in front of them in their kind of stock, flip to their side. And on your turn, you'll take one of yours from your stock, put it on your side, and flick it. And basically, if it hits any disc, any other disc, it will flip it to your side. So if you're light and you flick and you hit it like a darkened torch, it will flip to light. If you hit one of your opponent's druid, it'll flip the druid to your side, and so on and so forth. And that's how it goes. And basically, the game goes until one player either has all the torches on their side or all the druids on their side. And that's it. That's the whole game. So it's like Othello kind of flicking game. And it's a really fun game. It's co-designed with Trevor Benjamin of kind of War Chest and Undaunted Normandy and all these kind of fame. It was also part of the Cambridge Playtest group. And it was a game he kind of developed almost with his daughter as well. It was just his daughter really liked to play it. It kind of almost made it for his daughter. And it's such a great game. And I've played in a lot of different situations. It's super simple, but it just, like, this does not scream simple flicking game, unfortunately. And yeah, it just it just didn't really hit, and it hasn't made back its advance or anything like that. And I think, yeah, we basically have the rights back. So if anyone's interested in the game, we have the rights back to the game at this point. Yeah, so it was just a bit. Sorry, there are 6 druids, so we each have 3. We each start with 3, and basically whoever is first has the 2 torches on their side, so that kind of balances the first player thing. Yeah, so I'd say that's the other kind of big disappointment. It is the kind of game that could do well in a mass markety kind of setting with a better theme, and maybe that's something we will keep looking at. It's sort of I should probably keep this copy out so I can remember to sort of think about it. But yeah, yeah, that's the other kind of disappointment, I guess. But yeah, and I think it was also strangely expensive as well. Just how it worked out. I think it was like £20 in the UK. I think this is a little bit just to do with exporting and the UK market being small, and if you're printing in the US or like I don't know, but it was just kind of too expensive. And it's the same kind of line. And I'd say the bigger, well, not disappointment, it's not one of my games, but Dice Heist was in this same kind of line from Brett Gilbert and Trevor. And this is a fantastic dice rolling push your luck game. That also, if anybody's watching, this should absolutely be reprinted. It should be. If you haven't played it, play it if you get a chance. It's fantastic. It's such a great little dice rolling kind of push your luck game. Yeah, it's really, and even this, I think the presentation is better. It was kind of like this heist, and you've got all the cards that you're stealing are like famous artwork and things like that, and they're kind of, they were kind of done in a sort of a jokey way. Like you can see. This is you're stealing from different museums, and this is stealing from the British Museum. You see like a big teapot or teacup in the middle of the British Museum or something like that, and like huge freedom on the metropolitan US things and things like that. Yeah. Oh, Rory knows it. Top pub game when that was a thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a great pub game. So it absolutely needs to be reprinted, and I think it suffered from some of the same problems of like cost and these and maybe presentation slightly. But yeah, it is absolutely a fantastic game. I tell everybody to pick it up if you get a chance. And it should be reprinted. I hope it will be. We kind of live in this world where, I mean, the great thing I guess about Kickstarter is that if games there's always a good chance for a game to live again, even with only a few thousand copies because of Kickstarter. Like you look at Grail Games that bring about Fjords, for example. I don't think Fjords would have ever got reprinted without Kickstarter, I suspect. But it's great that it can exist again in that way. So yeah, fingers crossed. We live in hope. And yeah. I was going to do I don't know if it's very I was talking about Friday, but I'll have to try the stack all my game designs and try and see if they're as tall as me. I think it would have to be close now, but yeah, we will see. We will see. Maybe with one release or something like that. Who knows? Yeah. So yeah. Dice Heist. Check it out if you get a chance. I will have a bit of tea. Do you get a prize if they're taller than you? I don't think so. I think you. I mean, it seems ever so slightly pretentious, so that's the reason I haven't really done it. I remember David Turtsey did it, and he had two piles of games that were as tall as him. He had one which were only his designs or co-designs, and other ones which he designed solo modes for, which I thought was quite incredible. I think it helped a bit also that a lot of his games are like huge Kickstarter things, so they're like this thick and help with the height and things like that. You can check out David's. I think it was on Facebook. I think he posted it. It would have been a little while ago now. But yeah, he's definitely been quite prolific. But also, yeah, this is one of the things where the size of the box actually does make a difference. So all these tiny little adventure games is a bit of a different thing. Yeah, but yeah, and so the plans are just to kind of it's actually, we're just really in like the middle of it all. It's sort of interesting. I've really moved back from developing new games at the moment because there's just so much to kind of catch up on just keeping up with development of existing designs. Like Mandela and I met yesterday to chat about our co-design, which is sort of slowly moving forward, but we've got some problems with it at the moment, and we're going to try and fix that somehow. But yeah, it's definitely at that point where it's just kind of you just keep like keeping up with everything basically. That's my current job. And it's good. There's plenty of things coming to kind of fruition, hopefully, and things like that. Whoops, I've still got this coming up. No, don't worry, Zane. Don't worry. No, you it's not you have far too many things to do, and yeah. But and I do want to become famous, as the bot was promising me, But oh, thanks very much, Rob. Thanks. Yeah, I can't actually see when, because I in StreamYard you can't actually see when things are deleted. I have to change to the other format or something like that. Yeah, and yeah. Well, what I mean, those are. I'm trying to think what other things would have happened since Friday, but I think that's mostly it. I was just allowing. Exactly. Thank you, Zaid. Someone looking out for me finally. Yeah. But yeah. What else has been? Well, anyone else? Oh, thank you. Yes, drawn onward. What game ideas are sizzling in your head that you've been exciting to ponder, if any of them? Well, this flavor game, this cooking game, is still like the game that I've had in my head for at least the last 2 years, and I've done some work on it. I've done some research. I bought a few books. I've like planned out cards and worked out the scientific kind of like breaking down the flavor compounds in these different, and how you can kind of simplify it to like you have like 8 or 10 categories, so it's not like this kind of crazy thing. I even know a rough structure how it could work, but it's really stuck at this point that I have to make like 60 cards, and that's the whole game. It's kind of like almost like Wingspan. The cards need to have enough detail to really deliver both the mechanisms and the theme. And I know it's not finished. When I design them, I'm going to come up with new ideas, but I just need to do something to kind of like push it forward. And I just have not got in the headspace to do it, which is a bit sad. And I have even done various things to get me very close to it. That is the game that is like the absolute top of the list. And it's actually interesting. It's a game that I really want to work on by myself, not because I don't like co-designing, but there's a very rare case where I have a game where I have such a clear idea of theme and I have quite a clear idea of mechanism that I really want to follow it myself and see what game I would make, in the hopes that I'll make a game that I really enjoy. And the last time I did that, I made Monumental. So I'm not saying that I'm going to always, succeed like Monumental, and maybe Monumental wasn't a success depending on but it's the kind of game I like, these kind of variable power engine building games. And I want to try and make those, when I can. But because I'm not co-designing, it just means that it kind of gets pushed behind. It gets pushed to the back of the queue because I don't want to let down all my other co-designers. I want to make sure that I'm pushing forward those games and things like that. There seems to be some interest. Yeah, cooking and games are my jam. Oh yeah, fantastic. Yeah, well, it's actually all based on. I can show the book actually. There's a really interesting. I'll be back. Excuse me. How do I get in the chat? Oops. Need one of those like technical difficulties. Like I need to throw up a Matthew will be back with everybody. So I've got this book called The Flavor Matrix. And the really interesting thing is that, so I used to work as a food chemist and know quite a bit about the science of flavor and like the chemical compounds that cause that. But this book, I think, is one of the best that has really done it in a way that kind of simplifies it. So for every kind of food, they break it down into the kind of different flavor categories, and then like the different foods that kind of have the most in common with it. And so this is kind of the science behind why certain foods taste well together. Like, for example, this eggplant, and, you know, the categories are like, you know, vegetal or marine, terpene, which is kind of like spicy or woody flavors, smoky flavors. You've got Maillard reactions, which is basically what happens when meat cooks. So Maillard reaction is it's incredibly complex, actually. The moment you like sear a piece of meat, you have these Maillard reactions, which basically cause meat to brown, but you create like thousands of aromatic compounds in a few seconds. And that's why meat has a very, very complex flavor. And, you know, it's this mixture of like nutty, roasted, toasty, all of those are from Maillard reactions. Then you have like fruity flavors, you have floral, dairy, sulfur, alcoholic kind of flavors. And for each of those categories, it's kind of showing you which of the categories are kind of its most strong in, or what it has like the most compounds in, and then like some examples of other foods which are sort of similar to it. So that's really, really cool. I've also got the flavor thesaurus, which is a similar idea. And again, it has this sort of wheel of different kind of flavor kind of profiles, different, different categories. So can you show the title again? Yes, it's The Flavor Matrix by James Briscioni. Briscioni? Yeah. It's really fun. I would definitely recommend it. And you're right, it is laid out really well. And basically they just, the way it works is that each, they've got about 100 or so ingredients, and then they always have like a recipe after it, which is sort of trying to encapsulate something that was from the ingredient they introduced. And then they have some stuff in the introductions about different, some other, like, just trying to talk about, taste versus flavor, and it's all, this is all based as much as it can on these huge databases. And even at the back, they have it broken down much more. It's a bit hard to see, actually, but you basically get to see the actual, like, compounds themselves, which are the chemical compounds which cause, particular flavors and things like that. Anyway, so basically I want to make a game based on these, and it's on the most basic level, is that oh yes, that's actually a really cool question, Alex, because where I worked, we did have an artificial nose, ophthalmometer, which we actually was used. You can use it for various things, but the project I knew when I was there, they were using it to detect taints in water. Actually, the nose is really, really sensitive to detecting taints. And what you do is you separate out, you sort of volatilize a water sample, and you can separate out the chemical compounds and kind of sniff them one by one. And it'll tell you kind of which one's causing the taint. But you can also do the same for taste. You can use the same idea of chromatography, liquid chromatography this time instead of gas chromatography, which you use to smell. And you can separate, if you use food grade solvents, you can essentially separate out tastes and work out which chemicals are corresponding to which tastes. And we worked with pure compounds. We doped some compounds with like pure esters, which are, esters are one of the chemical compounds which are responsible for very, very strong flavors, like, like banana flavor is an est, is in an ester and things like that. So yeah, it is possible. That was as a sort of an aside. Yeah, so it's like taste. It's LCMS, liquid chromatography mass spectrometry, and it's like taste LCMS, or maybe there's a more sort of technical word. Yeah, and the idea is to have that, it'd be a huge stack of cards, a little bit like Wingspan. Each is a specific ingredient. You'd be running like a kind of probably a little bit of a not Ponzi, but a little bit of a like hipster, trendy, like, you're up and comer chef trying to make new cool ingredients, trying to use seasonal ingredients and things like that. And you'd be getting these cards and you'd be putting them together into dishes. And each card would have between 1 and 3 symbols on it, which would be from those categories. So, you know, like fish would have marine symbols, you know, different types of fish, but they might have like nutty because they go well with meat or things like that. And basically, on the very basic level, when you put cards together, you're trying to match symbols across different cards because then you're creating good flavor combinations. And that's the basic way they score. But of course, a la Wingspan, there would be all these abilities. There'd be ways to, you know, maybe change the flavor compounds in a dish or enhance them, get new cards, etc., etc. That's the game. And, you know, every time I talk about it, when I think about it, I know it can work. I know it's a lot of work. Yeah, molecular gastronomy is also another kind of insight. Yeah, I mean, molecular gastronomy is also sort of talking to the same thing about understanding the science of food, essentially. A combo of fun flavor stuff mixed with dirty under the hood sounds good. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it hits the great. I think you can deliver a really great engine building game, but with a really great theme that I think everyone can connect to in at least some way. Everyone eats, you know, a lot of people are interested in cooking, but also the fact that it's not meant to be educational, but the fact that it is built on like the way that flavors do actually work, and you could learn a little bit if you're interested, I think. And also, I just love the idea of having a huge deck of like this really like diverse set of ingredients, really specific, you know, regional ingredients. And yeah, so anyway, that's the promise of the game. And I even have a spreadsheet where I've you know, got 100 cards and I've already done the flavor, you know, like symbols, but I have to start doing the, you know, the kind of abilities and things like that. Yeah, so I hope I'll do it. And different cuisines are expansion. Yeah, possibly. It's sort of interesting. I kind of want to. Yeah, it's a very good point. I don't know whether I want to make it kind of global from the start, or like Wingspan is doing, going around the world. Because it's interesting from what I've read is that actually Western and Eastern, however we want to define those, cooking actually have almost like divergent philosophies when it comes to flavor. Western cuisine wants to match flavors, so they want to take two foods which have similar compounds or similar kind of flavors and put them together. And that's considered, you know, a good taste. Whereas actually in Eastern cuisine, you want diverse flavors. You want flavors that don't overlap, but rather complement. And so it's actually like an orthogonal approach to sort of combining flavor on like even like a scientific level, which is this sort of like meta thing over the course of, you know, what you're actually choosing to do. So I don't, part of me wants to offer like both in the base box, that there's a way to play on the kind of like the more Western thinking of having similar ones and you're kind of rewarded for that. And then you could play in the kind of more Eastern sense and you actually want diverse flavors. You don't want overlap. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't got that far, certainly. And that, you know, for now, I'm just like, if I can get a game working, then I'll figure out you know, how I would do expansions and things like that. But it's something that really speaks to me. I'm really interested in it. I love, and I think there's such a good. I think there's a lot of room right now for games just with themes that speak to people that are interesting, but are kind of approachable. And I feel like this does it. Alex says, would the cards be double-sided with the raw and cooked sides? No, they'd be single-sided. But I think the idea would be that you could cook or you could treat the cards in different ways, and that would add or subtract flavor compounds. So, you know, if you roasted something, you might add a roasted flavor profile to that card beyond the ones they've already got. Or sometimes you might strain something, or you might distill something, and that might, you know, remove certain flavor compounds, and you'd be left with one. So you'd be trying to alter the ingredient so that it would have exactly the flavor profile that you want. Using, you know, exactly replicating exactly the kind of things you do in cooking already to kind of either add or subtract flavor compounds to things. You know, you could make a stock from something, for example, and then add that to a different dish or things like that. Yeah, so that's what's going on. But yeah, it's been on the books for at least 2 years, but I have not made too much progress, and I'm afraid probably for at least the next month or two I won't make any more, because I am a little bit snowed under, but it won't be forever, I hope so. But yeah, thanks for all the interest and the things like that. And it's sort of weird, you know, as much as I always say, like, don't worry about people stealing your ideas and things like that. I've always tried to be careful about not I haven't spoken about it much, I guess. I mean, I don't normally talk about games that I haven't designed yet, realistically, but there was something about me that I feel like this is like just such a great, like, and it's sort of, it's hard. No matter how experienced you are, you always fall into the same sort of thing of like, oh, the idea is the most important thing. It's not. It's how it's going to be developed. It's how it's going to be actually put into a game. It's going to be how that game works, which doesn't exist yet. So yeah, it's like you've got to stop thinking that. And there's also a sort of an idea that talking about a project can sometimes take away your interest for it because you kind of get validation for something, and then that means you don't push towards it. But anyway, I can't second guess myself. I know I haven't worked at it, so some maybe all you out there can keep me accountable if you remind me every now and again. What are you doing with that flavor game? No, thanks very much, Jay. Keep me accountable. Keep me on it. I really want to make it. I know it's one of those kind of like personal goals. I would say it was interesting. I realized I haven't really set any goals for this year, to be perfect. Like, I mean, I talked about goals at the start of the year as Twitch. I feel like everything's sort of changing a lot. But this would be a goal for me by the end of the year to not necessarily finish the game, because often games I work by myself do take a little bit longer, but to at least have a prototype and to have played it a bit and to kind of have a solid foundation that I can keep working on. That is definitely a goal for this year. Edo Baraf had an interesting counter rant about how important ideas are. Yeah, I think I might have seen it. I do think for certain games, the idea is the thing, right? Like either the game works or not, and it's all in that idea. So there are definitely some times where the idea is really important. But I know for this game, I think for a game like this, it's going to be both. I think the beauty of it and how it could work well is that when you pitch it to somebody, they're like, wow, that sounds amazing. And when you play it, it's like, wow, that's a really cool game. I really enjoy it. And like, that's when and I think, for example, that's like the Wingspan kind of effect. And, when you fire on both cylinders, I think that's what you want to do. Rob says, I saw where he's coming from, and it's an interesting perspective, but I think it's really only part of the story. Yeah, it depends. I mean, but it is true that like with certain games, like with Light and Dark, like that initial idea about flicking and flipping the disc over, either it worked or not, and it did work. And that was the idea. The idea was very important, and there wasn't much development. And even slightly more complex games, if you have a very clear idea and that encapsulates the game, then yeah, the idea of course is important. So I don't know if it's so important to try and say which one's important or not. As you said, it's only part of the story. Hi, Imogen X. Certainly turning an idea into a good game is the hardest part. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that is the task of design, isn't it? Like you start with somewhere, and it's how do I get to a point where it's an enjoyable game to play, and all the twists and turns and all the choices you're gonna have to make along the way. Yeah. So, and I guess the other thing with the flavor game is I have this. I've probably built it up too much ahead because I know it. I think the other thing is sometimes with certain ideas, whether it's right or wrong, that. Like, I can't change this theme. I know what the game can be, and I need to stick with it. So in some ways it has more constraints. And so you kind of build it up, and I probably put a bit too much pressure at the start, when I should just be saying, well, just let anything happen and get started and get a game going, and then try and fit it into your kind of vision. I've probably been a bit slave to my vision, I guess. If that makes sense at this point, or at least that's kind of sorry about that. That's kind of like, what's the word? Throttled my progress or something like that. John Aldrin, I have a number of similar game ideas that I want to make, but they're more often thought upon than acted upon. I think this is we're all kind of like ideas rich and time poor, or kind of like energy poor sometimes. I think it's perfectly normal. I think the thing is it depends, and it is, I think, to sit back and sort of say what is important to you, and sort of go like in 1 year or in 1 month, or what will I've wanted to do on games. And if your answer to that is I want to work on this project, then that gives you some impetus to go to sort of check yourself and go like, hold on, like I said that this is important to myself. I should probably do something on it. But it's hard to say how things go, and I think you've got to be easy on yourself at the end of the day. Like often people, if you're, especially if you're not doing it for your job, like you should be enjoying it. And if you manage to make the game, then great. If you don't, then well, that was just the way it went. Jay says, as a rule of thumb, I don't talk about games I don't talk about games I don't work on, mostly because I don't want it to take up brain power if I can't do anything about it. Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I think that, and yeah, that's your prioritization. You've prioritized, I want to finish the games I'm working on. So one of the ways to do that is to not talk about things that you're not working on, because that's going to take away from your current sort of projects. Yeah, I think, well, I mean, I'm streaming, so I guess I'm talking about anything, but it feels good to talk about it a little bit, because it keeps it in my brain as something that is important to me, because I think you can forget that. And yeah, maybe there's a community out there that will keep me accountable, which will be good. Alex says, there's so many games where there's a really simple, elegant mechanism or part of gameplay, and I think I wish I'd thought of that. And I guess actually those ideas are quite valuable. And Rob sort of adds, no thanks yet. Yeah, I completely agree. I think there are certainly a class of ideas where that idea is very valuable because it describes an amazing game by itself. And you can imagine, like, I actually don't know the story, for example, how Codenames was developed. But the very core idea of it, that that there's a set of cards and they're in teams, you're trying to, you give the way you give clues, like that idea, that's a very valuable idea, realizing how you can do that. Yeah, the crew as well. I mean, I think the crew, it's interesting. I think I've been thinking about the crew a little bit, because I think the idea is good, but I wonder if you told 10 designers, make a cooperative trick-taking game, I don't think they would all, they wouldn't all make the crew, right? Like, you would have 10 different games. So I think we shouldn't forget, like, actually, I feel like the design and development of the crew is quite important. I don't know where it started, like, because whether did it start with the pitch of, as I'm saying, like, did it start with, I just want to make a cooperative trick-taking game? Maybe it really had the idea of the mechanisms from the start, and therefore I'd say that, yeah, it's a very valuable idea. But I think there's a lot of actually really good development and design in the crew, actually, that makes it work very well. Yeah. Rob said, yeah, I did think of the crew, just didn't even attempt to implement, which is why I'm not rich. Rob, you should learn by now, yeah, no, it's true. And every game is different, and other, certain games have, yeah, where that idea is so, sort of, important, but yeah, it just varies, I guess. Yeah, so we're coming up on sort of 10 minutes to go, so vaguely winding down, but still open to questions, drinking tea. Hope everyone's got to actually finish their tea or coffee or whatever. I've barely drunk about this much of my tea, so I'm going to do a little bit of that. I should say also thank you so much to everybody who's joined and continues to join. I don't exactly know when my anniversary is, but I must be around the 6 months or a little bit more. Or maybe I'm really coming up on 6 months of streaming. And I'm still kind of amazed that there are some folks who've really been there from the start and really happy to keep listening to my sort of unplanned ramblings, once or twice a week. So, thank you very much as always for turning up and for being in the chat and being so kind of friendly to everybody. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry. I think I missed this question, Jay. Maybe you asked this before. Sorry. Do you feel like you're learning from mentoring? That's a good question. I think I probably did. I think the amount I learned has decreased over time. Like, I learned a lot from probably the first few people I mentored. Whereas now I think, because I've done it so much, like a number of times, sometimes there are aspects that kind of play out in similar ways, like, because, beginning designers have similar problems. They're not so different. Of course, each person has their own kind of quirks and specificities, but so I think I probably learned the most from those first few mentoring experiences. I think the other interesting thing is I have done similar things in my professional life in the sciences. When you're supervising a PhD student or an undergraduate student, Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me? I'm back. Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, sorry about that. I had a little blip in my internet. Uh, yeah, so I guess I also for a lot of years previous to like mentoring in game design, I'd done similar sort of mentoring things in my professional life. So I think um, I'd probably learn a lot from that. So again, it's sort of been maybe uh, less later on, less in the sort of the game design thing. Um, but I think the one thing I guess not the one thing, but one thing I've learned is that just not to discount new designers. And I think I'm really glad that more and more people are interested in game design. It's hopefully becoming a little bit more equitable in those who have access to game design or who can get assistance from traditionally sort of underrepresented groups in game design, because it's so refreshing to see new perspectives on games and game design and new ways to think about how to make them and what interests people and what games they want to make. And I really think that it's that you get so much from like one game from a new designer. I feel like is sometimes worth more than like 5 more games from a very established designer, because you get so much. In some ways, you get that new perspective, that creativity that hasn't existed before. And I'm just really inspired, I think, by working, especially with the designers who are much earlier in their careers, when they're working on their first game or first 1 or 2 games. The way they think about games, that even though there are things that I can help them with, there are things that I try to tell them is, actually, like, you should trust your gut on this, or you should follow what you're passionate about, or what interests you creatively, because that is valuable and important. And I'm not here to tell you what is, that you have to change that. Actually, I'm really interested by your creativity and how you're approaching games or thinking about things differently. It's the thing where we also say, like, it's good to read and to listen to podcasts and things like that, but there's also, it's good to sometimes not read everything and to sort of follow your own gut, even if it goes against conventional wisdom or it doesn't seem to fit, because those are the ways that you make the new breakthroughs and come up with new ways of playing, and that's really, really great. So I'd say that's like one of the things I've certainly learned. Yeah. Rob says, my mentee started serious game design in lockdown and has a whole fresh perspective because of this. Really interesting. And what do you mean by serious? Do you mean with a view to being professional, or do you mean in some other instance? I mean, the other thing I kind of like also, that I've tried to look for mentees who are trying to be professional game designers, and I find that interaction quite interesting, because it's a very different thing that you're mentoring on. You're not really mentoring that much on how do I get started a game, how do I finish a game, because these designers often have done that already. They've had games published. They don't have to learn about how to pitch games to publishers. But it's much more looking at, like, well, how do I manage my time amongst different projects? How do I maximize my chances for a particular project to be successful? Or things like this. How do I think about targeting particular publishers? And you don't get as much kind of like podcasts and media focus on things, just because those audiences are much smaller. Obviously, like the actual professional game designers, there's not that many of them. But it's always nice to kind of discuss, kind of like with colleagues. It's rare that you meet someone else in that kind of same situation. So that's kind of that's also been a kind of really kind of refreshing aspect to it, I would say. Rob said they had just tinkered previously. This is the first game they've followed through and properly iterated on. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. I mean, of course, lockdown has been a great, it's very, very tough, but it in some ways, it's been an opportunity with time. And if folks are able, to do it, then that can be really valuable. And I hope it goes well. And yeah, and I think I really impressed by the program overall and what they've been able to. And I imagine it's a lot of work on Grace and Mike's part, but I'm really glad that they do it, and I hope it will keep continuing on, and there's kind of a nice community around it as well, and especially actually with during the pandemic, when they've started having these kind of online presence and Discord and videos and things like that, seminars. I think that's also been really great. So you don't have to tell us all too much information, so I would say. But yeah, What are all the isms? Yeah, that we don't sexism, racism. Yep. I would say so. Are you asking whether there are other ones? Oh, there are more. I don't remember the words in English. Anyone else? Feel free to put in the chat. You put me on the spot, and I can't. Oh gosh. Solipsism. Somehow I think. If anyone thinks of it, if I think of it, then ableism. Yeah, that's a good one. Fascism, also good. Good, all good suggestions. Yeah, prism. That sounds like if Aqua was here, that would be an Aqua response. I feel like that is like, but yes, certainly we don't tolerate fascism. Well, hopefully we don't. Yeah, good way to end the stream. Thanks for that. No, but I hope that I think those are the main ones. I mean, they don't. I mean, I guess sexism and also anti-trans and sort of I don't know how you put together all the kind of like LGBTQ plus kind of. I don't know if there's an ism around that necessarily. But yeah, photojournalism. Yeah, Aqua, did you miss my point about the prism that would be your ism kind of thing? But yeah, I mean, I guess things like religious tolerance. We don't respect people who are if you discriminate based on someone's religion or something like that. But again, there's not really an ism for that, or at least I can't think of one. Yeah, but just have to start in on words to get Aqua. Yeah, it's like we've summoned. We said isms 3 times, and Aqua has been summoned. But yeah. Well, yeah, we're coming up on the end of the hour. If anyone wants, they know Bez is on. We will do our normal raid of Bez, and I won't be able to stick around for very long after the raid because it's onwards and upwards in the day of many meetings. Evangelism, we don't tolerate evangelism. Bass as impression. Okay, I think it's all gone. It's all gone horribly wrong at this point. No, but it's a bit of fun, I guess. Yeah, so I hope everyone has a good rest of the week. I will be back on Friday afternoon at the normal time, 4 p.m. UK time, 5 p.m. European time, and yeah, who knows what will be going on by then? Who knows how many more hours I will have played of Stardew Valley by that point? Hopefully, because I'm getting my controller this afternoon, so yeah, hopefully that will also fix my various kind of like posture issues and things like that, or at least alleviate some of them. So we will see. Yes, and thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for everybody for dropping by as always. It's always been a lot of fun. Exorcism. Yeah, I feel like we're just going to keep a list of the useful isms, I guess, for any future talk. I will, and yeah, thanks for dropping by, and yeah, have a great week, I guess. So I will have a quick look and see if Bez is around. Maybe not. Stuff by Bez. No luck. Absurdism. We do tolerate absurdism. Yeah. No, thanks very much, Arnold. And yeah, we'll talk more about the game soon, or else you'd be banned. Yeah, we haven't had to ban anybody yet, or apart from obvious spammers. So that's good. Hopefully you won't be the first with too much absurdism or something. Yeah, and I also got I was in the European maths trade, so I've picked up a copy of Murano, an older Inca and Marcus Brand design from Lookout. So looking forward to playing that in the next couple of days, so I can let you know what I think. So hopefully that will be fun. It seems people are heading off, which means Bez might be going or not. No Bez as yet. Tears. Oh yes, very funny, Rob. Funny. Yeah, yeah. See you, everyone. Have a great week, and take care. I feel like I'm sort of hanging around. I mean, is Bez even? Bez must be. Maybe Bez is just running a little bit late. Oh, here we go. Bez is on. Let's go. It looks like with Rita. So take care, everyone. Have a fantastic week. See you on Friday. And yeah, stay safe. Cheers. Bye.